staying true to what our lovely viewers asked us for, classic cinema, a focus on those classic films of cinema history.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know.
Yes. We have selected a surprisingly controversial one. I didn't realize there was that this film was as polarizing as it is.
Controversial to who?
To the film snob community, I think, and just the movie watching public in general.
Interesting.
I think there's a sharper divide on this film than I realized there was.
Should we tell them what film we are discussing?
No. Let's just keep being cryptic and
in the spirit of the filmmaker. Let's be very.
Look at us. We're basically Hitchcock.
Yes. Yes, of course.
Vertigo, baby.
Vertigo.
I did just want to keep that going. I just like, I'm feeling a little dizzy. You know what it is yet? Like, you're welcome that we stopped. First and foremost, thank you all for watching. Whether you're a repeat viewer or a brand new viewer, we appreciate you being here. Shout out to our Patreon viewer.
There's one.
We got one. You got to start somewhere.
Gotta start somewhere. Thank you, Patreon.
Fish is the name, and we couldn't appreciate you more, Fish. If you haven't checked out our Patreon, go check it out. We have a whole brand new full episode over there that one person has watched, and it is a good episode. It's on the film Crash from 2004. So go check it out. You know, it's $5. You need $5? Give it to us. Keith?
I need it, please.
yeah. It will make or break
I have mouths to feed, please.
Yeah. A little Vertigo here. Keith, a little bit of the master himself. Alfred Hitchcock, the great. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Vertigo, 1958, starring James Stewart and Kim Novak.
I prefer Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm a Jimmy guy myself, too. I called James Caan Jimmy Caan a lot in the Elf episode, and I was like, am I old friends with him? Why am I doing that? So I overcorrected now back to James Stewart. Jamothy Stewart. And I mentioned it being polarizing. I thought this was just sort of a universally beloved because this film often finds its way to the top, if not literally the very top, of some people's, including some very high-profile lists of the greatest films of all time. So there are those out there of fame and repute who will argue that this might be the best film ever made.
Yeah.
And then I find out that there are a sizable portion of people that don't think it's that great. So I think it's fascinating.
That is interesting, and I didn't know the latter. I am learning that now with you at home. I didn't know people. I can understand that people don't think it's the best film ever. Like, sure, everyone can think every film is not the best film ever. That doesn't mean it's bad. But I'm very curious if people are like against the film, like, no, this film is actually garbage. Because that I'm very curious, I guess, to hear that take. Maybe you have that take, and this would be a great episode.
Well, I mean, should we start there with what we think?
I say, give me a cliff notes, give me a hot take off the top.
Little hot take. I don't think it's that great.
Here we go.
I'm not gonna sit here. You're all clicking off.
No. Let me talk.
Hang on. Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, if we need Keith to keep you as a viewer, we're in a lot of trouble here.
Everett. They come for me.
That's too far.
They come for me.
I'm not gonna sit here and passionately argue that it's like bad. I don't think it's bad. And I don't think that even. I don't even think a lot of my uncertainty about this film, or like, because I wouldn't even say I dislike it. Like, there's a lot to like, but I think that there's just some major flaws, if I may be so bold, that really cut the legs out for this. There's a lot that is done in this film that I think is wonderful, and I want to talk about that stuff too. But I am someone that falls on the side of the fence that goes like, this is not my favorite Hitchcock film by a long shot. It's not what I would say is his best. It's
Well,
just
that's a good question. Do you think general audiences or general folks out of Hitchcock films think that this is his best film? It's this or Psycho or North by Northwest? Like what are his
Rear Window is up there.
I never thought that is my favorite. It used to be in my top 10. That is my favorite Hitchcock.
Got rid of that shit for the original White Man Can't Jump.
Until White Man Can't Jump came back into my mind. I'm a hooper, baby. But that's my favorite, but that doesn't mean it's his best. Those are the three movies. Psycho, North by Northwest, and this film, Vertigo, are the ones that like come to my mind of what I think other people think are his best films. One of those three, but you think it is Rear Window? Or what do you think people, not you, other people?
I think people, I think it is exactly what you're saying. Like it's of those three, I think would be popular choices. I think probably Psycho or Vertigo. I think that like more, I mean, we speak in such big generalities around here. So I know this is not just the case with everybody. I think there's a large subculture of film fans and film snobs who are gonna say Vertigo no matter what. Because Psycho was a little more like mainstream, popular, famous. Yeah. Vertigo's a little less accessible, a little more experimental, a little bit surreal perhaps. That it appeals to people who, not everybody that likes it is this way, but there's people that just want to sound smart and they want to sound cultured. And so I think they picked Vertigo. I read in my research about this, I read that there's a quote from Quentin Tarantino from a podcast or something that says, "Oh, Vertigo is your favorite movie of all time. I don't believe you." Or like, "Oh, you really like Vertigo? I don't believe you." So there's, it's a mixed bag. I'm just kind of lukewarm on it. It's just not something I really enjoy.
So here's a more profound version maybe of what you're trying to say. Because for morons, they listen to Everett. For intelligent people who like Vertigo, they
wear glasses.
And wear glasses. You listen to me. I think this is a excellent story and a good, above average to good film. I think this is made at a time where story is supreme. Like that's the thing. And it should be today, but that's sort of fallen by the wayside. I think story now takes a backseat in a lot of pop culture films. But neither here nor there. I think this is just an excellent story. If I told this story to you, I think you would be enthralled. I think this is a thing that we can all sit down and listen to. And if you take me through it, I would lean forward. But I think the film does the story a disservice in how the film tells the story, if that makes sense. Does it?
Sure. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I just kind of disagree that the story is even that great. Like, that's almost one of my biggest complaints.
Come on. At that time, too. Think about that time. Like,
yeah, that time you had more potential. Less stories had been told in film.
But that's my point. You don't think this is imaginative at that time? I think it's imaginative for today.
Yeah. No. Hitchcock, I think, if nothing else, which there's plenty else, but if nothing else, is remarkably ahead of his time in every conceivable way. And I mean that as a compliment. And sometimes he's doing things that he shouldn't be doing because they're not, the technology is not there. Like his imagination is incredible and was way, way, way ahead of his time. And he is one of the 5 or 10 best directors of all time for my money. So I'm not going to sit here and insult him in this conversation. But yeah, I think the story is good. I think there's just a lot of plot holes. So like, I don't know if we want to start there, but I think there's a lot of issues within the story. Like the general idea, sure. Like it's a very interesting idea. But I don't really think this movie is about the story. I don't think that's the purpose of this film. So that's
what do you think if it's not a character story centric film, what is it about?
I think it's about all of the deeper themes that Hitchcock is trying to portray. And I think that's why the first half of the movie, or the first kind of 2 acts, are so different from the third act. Whereas the first half-ish sets you up to be like, oh, is this kind of like supernatural story? Is this a kind of a detective story? Is this going to be like a procedural as we find out things? And then all of a sudden it's this sharp right turn where it's about obsession, and it's about the men and women and their dynamic in this abusive way, and it's not even remotely about like who done it. It's so to me the story isn't like the meat and potatoes here. The meat and potatoes is like whatever Hitchcock is trying to sneak up on you there.
No, but that's what I think is fascinating, and maybe I can hear myself arguing against it in other capacities. But again, it works for me here. I love, and I feel like I could see you loving too. I love how I felt during this film. Like, I really like the emotional positions I was put in. And again, that's based on the story. At points of the story, I wanted to kind of fall asleep because it turned into like a romance to a bit. But we can get to that in a second.
It drags a little bit.
It does. But I'm not here to talk about the things negative just yet. I'll get to them. But I think having a protagonist that you follow and then meet this woman, and so you're on board with this protagonist, you think he's a good guy, then you meet this woman, and then it becomes about their romance, and he loves her, and then she dies, and then you're left with, well, now what? There's still an hour left of this movie. Like, now what? Now what am I doing? Then to watch that man go insane and become someone that I don't even want to win at the end of the movie, and then have the movie end the way that it does, which obviously separate conversation I want to talk about in general. Like, for my money, I am weaving around emotionally. I'm being pushed and pulled in a really fun emotional way where I don't even know what I want by the end of this film. And I can hear myself saying, be like, well, that doesn't sound good. But I think it's in a really satisfying and interesting way in this particular execution of it. It's a very threading the needle situation here. But I think Hitchcock in this film does it. I enjoyed that ride of maybe what you found disjointed.
Well, yeah, no, I think we might just be arguing semantics here about just like story. Like, I agree with most of what you say, but to me, like, story here is kind of third to thematic elements and then the vibes, like atmosphere. Like, to me, those two things are more of a priority almost. The story, sure, the story is always going to be the skeleton that's moving this stuff forward, but like, that's not kind of front and center here to me. And again, maybe we're just arguing small details, but it's much more like the feeling that the film is giving you, and these really kind of whiplashy, conflicting emotions maybe that it makes you feel about its characters, which you're right, I really do like, and I think it's really fascinating, especially in that second half where it's just like, oh shit, like James Stewart is kind of evil all of a sudden. Like,
yeah, he's an awful person.
Yeah.
And not a position I often, because I don't watch a lot of Jimmy Stewart movies. I've seen a handful at this point, but not a position he's often in.
Yeah.
Well, even in Rear Window, he is the classic protagonist. He's not really nuanced in that way.
He was going to a darker place for this, I think very intentionally, as his career was evolving.
But it was you that screamed. Why did you scream?
I wanted to stop it, Scotty. I ran up to stop it.
You wanted to stop it. Why did you scream?
Oh, one thing I want to say just up front is there also in my research of this film, there is a subsect of people who would passionately argue that all of it's a dream, and it's all in James Stewart's head. And that's why there's so many like surreal, weird elements and weird lighting shifts. And I read this huge, long, article, blog, whatever, that was really getting into here's all the evidence for why none of this is real.
But where, and maybe you don't know this just based on your readings, but my question to that is, I'm open to it, but is any of it, like, how do you know what is real?
No, exactly. That's how I felt is like, what's real is that he's in that sanitarium, if that's the right word, like that psychiatric hospital where he is after her first
the
death.
whole time?
Yeah, he's just a patient in that place and is imagining so much of this, and then it used all this evidence to support it. But part of this, which is why I was bringing this up when we were talking about story, is this person that I read this who wrote this, a big reason why they were defending their position was because of all these plot holes, which is my criticism, I would say, lightly, of the story.
Well, what are the plot holes? Can we get into that, or what do you think the plot holes are?
I think plot holes...
He's got a notebook.
I did take some notes. I think plot holes can start even kind of smaller, like the fact that James Stewart's detective is a horrible detective. And, it's just like there's all these things like, oh, she wouldn't have made him as he was following her, or he parks in the alleyway, the only other...
He is the worst tale in surveillance history. Yes.
Literally.
But you can suspend your disbelief. That is not lay credence to
Maybe,
anything.
but it's one of many. It's like, oh, it does all this work to set up that he's got this back problem and he can barely move, but he doesn't have the back problem the rest of the time. He picks up that woman who's soaking wet out of the bay. Like, there's just shit like that.
And I'm gonna know. Can I argue these points? Because I think that's more nitpicky than anything. He had an injury that he recovered from. The injury is not the point. The point is to prove that he has vertigo, not to prove that he's hurt.
Well, yeah, but he literally was like, my back
nothing.
hurts. I have a cane, and then like 2 days later, he's diving in the bay. Like that was not that much time had passed. Like
no, but the film. He says in that opening scene, "Oh, the thing's coming off tomorrow. I'm better now."
Well, anyway, tomorrow will be the day.
Why? What's tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow. The corset comes off tomorrow.
Yeah, in that opening scene where he's holding his back, like and he's like can't even turn on the chair. But
I think you're just nitpicking. You cannot like it. I just think that's
it's not inaccurate though. You can't just be like, that's nitpicking when it's like, but they did all that, especially someone like Hitchcock, who is a master, who does everything so intentional. Don't make this big show of how he's hurt, and then the day later he carried this woman out, assumed he carried her out of the car into the house. Like, that's not nitpicky. That's a plot hole. How did he get her in there?
No, he's better. People get better. They made an effort to say, I'm getting out of this cane. I'm getting out of this corset tomorrow. I'm feeling great. Everything's great.
I think the film as a whole, story-wise, is very convoluted, and like there a lot has to happen just right for any of this shit to like it's a very convenient, like, okay, the husband who hires him is just gonna take the chance that he can't make it up the stairs because of the vertigo that has been mentioned. Like, what if he made it all the way up and saw him up there with the, like, this is your big plan, but like there's just a lot of, thank God it happened like that.
I think you're not wanting to go. It's a cynical approach, in my opinion. It's a cynical approach to a film, because if you have a fear of heights, to put something up high, to say like, go get that, and knowing full well you can't because you have a fear of heights, like, yes, it's not airtight, but it's not like bad. It's not like a hole. It's just whether you want to buy it or not. And if you choose not to buy it, okay, you can. That's absolutely your choice. I just think you're just then you're just being like, I don't like it. Meh.
The woman doesn't leave. She doesn't leave. They fake her death. She stays in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's silly. Sure.
Okay, like this. I'm just saying. And another thing, like, I'm not even saying these things are like things that like keep me up at night, and that's why I'm not sure this movie's great. I'm introducing a list of things that made this person think, oh, this is evidence that none of this is real because this is all super unrealistic. And
yeah, but typically you make good points. Today, not so much.
You just agreed with the last one. That's stupid.
That was
the
last one. That was the last one. That was different.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But yeah,
that's
that makes more sense in terms of how, if this really were to play out.
I think also I'll just say for anyone that's still watching, like I'm going to be a little more critical out of love for this, because like if you're coming at me and saying this is the best film of all time, like I'm going to be like, and I don't think it is. I'm gonna be maybe a little nitpickier about this
Sure.
kind of movie just based on its kind of heralded status in the world. Like, best movie of all time?
I don't think it's the best movie of all time. I would not say that myself. I just think, I think the story is, I really enjoyed the story. Like when it was, I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna keep going back to it.
Oh, Johnny-O.
I love the cinematography. I think a ton of the cinematography is just gorgeous, just stunning, as with a lot of Hitchcock stuff, obviously. It's a fantastic San Francisco movie. I have a lot of love for that city. It photographs very well, and fantastic use of the city in this film. From the first, the rooftop chase scene, the pan across the roofs with the Bay Bridge and the back. I mean, it's just like really great stuff that is never done anymore, which breaks my heart. I also love how weird it is. I think the movie is really weird, and for all of its flaws, I really like that. I like that it, like as I mentioned earlier, that kind of thematic right turn where it ceases to be this traditional detective story that it kind of leads you to believe it's gonna be. Oh no, now it's about the darkness of man. Like I think that is like really cool.
Yeah, yeah, I love, and I like that about Psycho. I think I've said this on the program before, if you've seen it. That was, the woman is the main character for 40 minutes of that film, and then she dies.
What?
Spoiler alert for a movie that's 60 years old. Midway through the movie, shit changes. You lose your protagonist in Psycho. In this, midway through the movie, this woman dies. You think it's this whole thing. I'm thinking the whole time, I've never seen the movie before. Shame on me. I've never seen it before. My first time for it. So I'm watching this movie, and I'm thinking just the movie is about saving this woman. They present it as he falls in love with this woman. They got to save her from this paranormal sort of potential activity. We have to figure out what it means, how to stop it. Like that is today's version of this movie. It's just very singular tracked. And then that woman dies. Midway through the movie, that woman dies, and you're like, well, now what? What? I don't know what to think. I don't know what to feel. I don't, like, shit, we lost? What, this whole thing I was rooting for, this love, and she's dead, like, now what? Like, I love that position. Again, if done, caveat, if done well.
Yeah.
And I think in this regard it is. So, and then from there, we embark on this other emotion of how intense this was. I don't know, I'm just enthralled by that general tale.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, that is really the main, to me, I don't think the performance is that great. I don't think the writing is that, there's sharper, Hitchcock films. Like, I don't think anything else is the best. And that's why I wouldn't put it in sort of that best movie ever category. I think it's a really good film and a great, great story. And I just enjoyed the movie-going experience. That's the best praise I think I can give this film. I really enjoyed the experience of watching it.
Yeah, I really like a lot of it. I really genuinely like a lot of it, but the film to me has what I would say are two major flaws. And then one or two things that are lesser to me that I just don't really like, which is personal. But I had, so I'd say two objectively bad things and two subjectively to myself. But the two objectively bad things are perhaps the two most important moments of the film, and that's what really makes the film take a hit for me. Those two things are, A, the ending. The last several shots.
Well, okay, great. Can we sit here for a second?
Please.
I'm just gonna ask questions to start. So you don't like it, is what you're saying. You do not like it.
I think it is horrible. I think it is horrible.
Why do you, why? And I feel like you would have loved it. I would have thought like, oh, Everett is gonna like this. Why do you think it is horrible?
I think what happens is fine. And I think it's not the story that I don't like. The execution of those final few shots and the fact that she just falls because she's startled by a nun who just comes up to be like, hey, what's going on up here? And she just freaks out and falls to her death is stupid, and then it's just over. Like I get
that's the best part.
I get the theme of that moment, that he's looking down, he's conquered his fear. He's no longer, this cured him of his fear of heights. And I don't mind that it's even over. But like I don't need like a wrap up. but just the cartoonish, to me, stupid way that she dies. It's not, I'd rather she just took a bad step. Like that would have been better. Like, oh shit. The way it's is it a jump scare? Is it like, why was this person just like peeking around the corner enough to make, like, you're not aware that there's this open window back here where this other person has already fallen to their death? Like, it's just so sudden that you're just like, wait, what? She just fucking, over. Like, you're just like,
the best part of the film is my jaw. I wish I had a camera on me because my jaw was on the ground when the credits when that Paramount thing comes up. I'm like, that's it. Like that's the end of the like. I love leaving me that way, and that's part of why I love the film going experience for this film because I go, holy shit, that movie's just over. That's it. That's just like crazy. I gotta accept that. I gotta sit for a second and be like, holy shit. How do I feel about that? Like, it just made me feel a lot, especially at that end. So I just think the abruptness of it is wonderful. I think the abruptness of it is wonderful. The way I interpret it is I feel like it's a lot happening at once, but the end to me, going back to that situation that he failed in to say like, oh, he overcame it, not overcome it. Oh, he overcame it.
That's another movie.
It's a different movie. I'm still working on that he overcame his fear, which was set up in the beginning. I do want to point that out too, because a lesser film doesn't set up in the beginning that they say like it would take another traumatic event for you to overcome.
Writing 101, baby.
Yeah, fantastic. First act, third act, fantastic. Good job. But it's ironic that the result is still the same. The woman dies twice. The woman dies twice in this, and his efforts mean nothing. And I think that's interesting and powerful to say, like, to make some sort of statement, and I should say my interpretation of the statement, saying, didn't matter if you could do it or not, she's dying. And then also I think there's a really interesting thing where when that shadowy figure comes up, in my mind I go, what the fuck is that? Because you start with supernatural. The film starts with this supernatural, like, oh, there's a spirit, it's haunting us, it's, I don't know, they're taking over this woman's body, and that becomes bullshit, and you leave that. Then at the end, the thing that kills her, the thing that drives her over the edge, is a shadowy figure that at first I thought was a fucking demon or something. Like, and then, ironically enough, it's a nun. It's the complete opposite of this demon or whatever that killed her. So it's a lot of sort of irony, I think, all happening in 15 seconds. And that's where I'm like, oh, holy shit, like I gotta process this for a second, like, wow. And the reason why I think it's great is because the whole film sets this up. Like, this isn't just happening. You have to watch the whole film to kind of catch all of those pieces, and all of those pieces that I'm talking about matter in some way or shape or form. They're relevant to the story.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I agree with all that, and I like it as you describe it, but that's not how it's portrayed. Like,
that's what to start this piece, rewind the thing that I said in the beginning. The story, if I told it to you, you would think it was great. But the film does a poorer job walking me through it than if I just kind of told it to you.
That nun emerging from the trap door, it never works on me. Like, it didn't scare me. I didn't know why. And this is also like performance a little bit, and I'm not trying to hate on Kim Novak because I think she does really great. But like, there's just sort of this remnant of that kind of over-performative 30s, 40s. This is the late 50s of just like, oh, and it's just like that makes it like.
No!
I heard voices.
Especially, I guess, by today's standards, like, it's so cartoonish that this moment that you described perfectly for all this meaning and it's coming around full circle, but now I'm distracted by the kind of like sudden comedy of it, but it's like, this should not be funny at all. And
of course.
It should be really horrifying. And just for whatever reason, whether it's just the limitations of the time or what I think, like, I just don't think Hitchcock shot that part that well. Like, I know that's blasphemy, but like, it really it falls flat, pun intended. And then all of a sudden it makes the fact that it's just over like, oh, so it just ended like a fucking clown car. Like, just like, and it's just like, oh, that movie's over.
I mean, yes, as you describe it, I can understand more of how you or one would feel that way.
So that was one of my personal big things that I think was objectively bad. Keith disagrees, which is fine. I'll meet in the middle. The other one I think is objectively bad. If Wikipedia is to be believed, Hitchcock also thought was objectively bad, and that was the scene in which it's revealed, the betrayal, the twist, where Jimmy Stewart leaves her at the place and says, "I'm gonna take you out to dinner. I'll be back in an hour." And then she proceeds to sit and write a letter.
And so you found me. This is the moment that I dreaded and hoped for.
Delivering all of the exposition about what is happening. Oh, and you'll find out soon enough that he killed his wife and threw her, and you were right.
I was the tool and you were the victim of Gavin Elster's plan to murder his wife. He chose me to play the part because I looked like her.
Like, that is bad. and apparently Hitchcock cut it, and then the studios or whomever forced him to put it back in.
Yeah.
But that is a tremendous mistake. And we can sit here and be like, well, we know Hitchcock didn't want to include it, so we're not going to hold it against the movie. But it's in the movie. So, like, we can only judge it based on...
It's not the great one's fault.
Yeah, sure. We can agree on that. But the fact is, it's in the movie. So it's a part of the movie, and it makes the movie much worse. It makes the movie much worse, which is, to me, another reason why I'm not going to be like, this is the greatest, because that scene sucks. It ruins the whole thing. I was thinking at the end, imagine if you were discovering, as James Stewart is explaining to her as he's forcing her up in this crazed mental state, getting violent with her, you're like, oh shit, that's what happened? Yeah. Or you don't even know it happened, it's ambiguous. Did that really happen? That's even better. Like,
yeah. Yep. So I thought about this very much. I agree. I don't like how the scene is executed, but what I kept going back and forth on is finding out at that point in the film. You can execute it differently, but do I want to find out that information at that point in the film, or is it best served at the end where Jimmy Stewart finds out in that part of the film? So you think, yes, I go back and forth because I thought about it because I have also said this on our program before, it's the bomb theory, right? Hitchcock's bomb theory, which I do like, and it's his thing, so he's known for it, letting the audience know something that the characters don't. So now we have the last 40 minutes of this film to be nervous and on edge. Is he going to find out? When is he going to find out? Is he going to be pissed? How is he going to respond to it? Like that tension is inherently baked in every scene moving forward from that moment in time, which is, again, interesting and creates an emotion. So I do go back and forth. They become very different films, I think. And I'm not ready to, I don't know if I'll ever be ready to say if one is better than the other. Obviously you are. But I don't know.
100%.
But I don't know. I think if that, to play devil's advocate and to defend the film, if the film did a better job parsing out that information or letting the audience find it rather than just being like, here's exactly what happened. Ready? Maybe, I think it can work. I think it can work if it was executed better.
Yeah, if the film did it better, it'd be better. That's a fair point about most films.
Fuck you. I'm trying to be intelligent. I'm trying to be smart. You're up here saying dumb shit.
No, I agree with you and the master, Alfred Hitchcock, most of the time. That revealing something to the audience that the other characters don't know helps allow for that tension. I think this is an example of it being the opposite almost, because the film is already very tense. And at those moments of the film, at that juncture, as we are just meeting this woman at the same time as James Stewart is, it's mysterious. Why does she look exactly the same? What if there was other subtle ways that you start to pick up that maybe this is the somehow the same person or a ghost or whatever? It if anything, it deflates that tension. It cuts that out right away because it's like, oh no, this is what it is.
He planned it so well, he made no mistakes.
I'm going to explain to you exactly what it is. And instead of me being able to wonder like, oh shit, is this really supernatural? Or is this really something more nefarious? And sitting in that tension while at the same time, James Stewart's character is getting a little crazier and more obsessive. And that's also making me tense and a little uncomfortable. And then it all culminates in this big thing. Like that to me is, it would hit harder if she put that necklace on and us too. We're like, shit, that's that necklace. Like it's just, I just can't be dissuaded.
I think it would be great. I think as you describe it, you should make films.
We should write Alfred Hitchcock movies. That should be.
I think we should just write good mystery suspense.
Alfred Hitchcock films.
I think that'd be great. As you describe it, I think that would be a great version of this film. And you are correct. It's unfortunate that it is the worst part of the film, and it is arguably the most important part of the film.
Yes.
You could say.
Yes.
So, and that is a tough one to recover from if you're trying to argue that this is the greatest film of all time or a top 5 film of all time. It is hard to make that argument with that.
It bobbles that transition between that film noir, detective story, supernatural at the beginning, and this weird obsessive thing that happens in the second half because you just cut out
you just say it. You just say it.
This is what it is. So yeah,
this is what happened.
You were right all along. Now we just have to wait and watch him be obsessive, and it's weird and uncomfortable without any mystery. But and then just as a real aside, a small minor criticism too on the subject of like very exposition heavy dialogue. I really noticed it at the beginning of the film when he's talking to Midge, sweet Midge, in the first scene that he's in, where he's like explaining his, acrophobia. And it's just the way, like the dialogue is just so unnatural. And normally Hitchcock films dialogue is one of like the stalwarts, like the best things. Yeah. But for him to just be like, yeah, you know, Midge, I got that acrophobia.
Johnny, the doctors explained to you.
I know. I have acrophobia, which gives me vertigo, and I get dizzy.
Well, you know what it means. Like, I can't get up too high, right? And I got that vertigo, and oh yeah, and it's just like, it's just so like spoon feeding the audience. It was distracting, sorry. My subjective complaints, they kind of overlap. Generally speaking, I don't love in films, and by don't love, I mean I hate. I don't like when people just like fall in love. Like really suddenly and obsessively, and over the course of 3 days and 2 conversations, I'll die for you. Like I can't live without you. Like I know that happens to some people, but like as a general statement, and I'm admitting this is my own taste, I hate that in movies. Any kind of movie. Mystery, romance, happiness, comedy, whatever it is, you're just willing to die for each other after a date, and that I can't really get along with, especially when one of the parties is 80 years old and the other one is 22. Like it's just like, why? What's the reciprocation there? Why is Kim Novak so interested in Grandpa Stewart? Like it's just a lot at once.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like you're taking all the things I would have spoke about, so this is good. It'll be a shorter episode maybe. But yeah.
The end.
Yeah, but yes, that is another gripe of mine. And it's the same, it made me think of Last of the Mohicans when you defended that very thing you seem to oppose right now. You thought I'd forget. It is very unwarranted, the love. There is nothing to show there. And I assume one of 2 things happened, and I'm not giving excuses, I'm just thinking out loud as to what one, it's the era where maybe you don't show a lot of that sort of affection on screen. Like, I don't know if the times are sort of limiting that passion, that raw emotion that would probably precede that type of intensity. I'm just giving potential options as to why it's not there. But they had that one touch, like when they both reached for the cup of coffee or whatever it was, and that moment where they like look at each other, and I'm like, oh, I guess they're in love now. I knew it from like that, like that's what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, obsessive love. Obsessive love.
Yes.
And that was another plot hole that this writer had pointed out, was that like James Stewart is supposedly like a veteran detective in San Francisco. Like he's probably not this like naive Romeo who's just gonna be like, oh, I have to be committed to a asylum after this woman I've known for 4 days fell to her death. Like, you know, I know it's traumatic, but still. So it's just a lot at once. And then the age gap it's a little distracting to me. It takes me out of it a little bit. James Stewart, I guess, was 50 in this moment, but 50 in the 1950s is like 75 today. Like he looks very old.
And is she, and I know in the film I think she's 26.
26?
But I don't know, in real life, is she?
I think she was right in
also
that range, like early 20s, first half 20s, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just like, and him and Midge are supposed to be the same age. They're like college sweethearts, went to college together. Midge is 19. You know what I mean? Like that woman is young. Like it's really weird. That's a whole nother element. I do love Midge though. I love that she goes a little crazy in that one scene where she does the painting.
Stupid.
Different. Yeah. But then that's never really revisited.
See but the thing that I really, I mean, this is gonna sound really stupid, but I like Midge's story. Like I love Midge's final shot. I love, she tells the doctor, none of your stuff's gonna work because he's in love with that woman, and I'll tell you something else, he still is. Like he was and he still is. Yeah. And then she kind of walks down this long shot, walks down this corridor with this long shot, kind of just stands there for a second, and it's like this send-off because like she's telling the doctor, but she's really like telling herself. Like this, she's accepting the fate of like, I've done all I can. I'm gonna let this, and she disappears from the film. She has no more, like she's a little side story. And again, I guess I could see people saying like very unfulfilled with Midge's story because it doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really account for much, but I think it adds an interesting dynamic to the film. And I like that sort of bittersweet ending. Yeah, I'm sure she finds love. I'm sure she's happy now, today. Midge, she found somebody. It's not
about her. It's not about her.
It's not about her, yeah.
It's
not about her. She's just caught in the riptide of old Jimmy Stewart.
The toxic obsessions of a man. And like how he's willing to overlook this great thing that he's got right in front of him. To go for the flashy, Kim Novak, which we understand.
Hey, I get it.
We get it.
I saw her.
Yeah. I'm in love with her. I fell in love with her immediately.
Immediately, I'll kill you for her.
That long theory about it being all in his head was supported by that scene in the institution or what have you, where because Midge also refers to herself and he refers to her repeatedly off and on in their scenes as like mother.
You're not lost. Mother's here.
And so this person posited that that is his mother visiting him. Like she doesn't look like that, but that it's literally like her voice talking to him. Like, don't worry, mother's here. Like you're okay. You're okay. You don't even know I'm here, do you? Like that scene is the closest thing to reality in the whole movie, which is interesting. But I think it's a long shot. For a lot of reasons. But
my only, it'd be fun if it was. I think that's like, I love those sort of mental games that we can play, and that's the beauty of film, interpreting in different ways and what things really mean. Like, that's awesome. My major pushback is I think Hitchcock is too intelligent, as we've said before, to not put any of that in Act 1. Like, where is any sort of resemblance of this is all a dream in Act 1? Rather than Act 2 and 3. I think that's kind of
the point, though. You could argue, this is the thing that's so fascinating about this film, and I think films kind of like this, where there is so much possibility due to a combination of things. Usually a great director is involved, but surreal elements, kind of unreliable narrator elements, all those sorts of ingredients that then anything, whether it's bad or good, can be labeled as intentional and then therefore good. It's not supposed to be in the first part of the movie because it's supposed to lull you into a false confidence that this is this very traditional, predictable thriller arc, but then no, it's really, oh shit, it's very dreamscapey, and we don't really know what's real or what's not. Or, you know, that's why there's these weird light shifts and they go into the bookstore and then all of a sudden it's really dark in there, but then it comes back up. Like the lights kind of going, when he first sees her come out all blonde, the second girl or whatever, dolled up, looking like Madeleine. She's got this aural glow around her. And when he's tripping, it turns into animate, like, it's just all supposed to be like it's very intentional if you believe that. So it's like, the argument can be Hitchcock is too smart to not put that stuff in the beginning, or Hitchcock's so smart he didn't put that stuff in the beginning. Like you can bend the narrative to be whatever you want it to be.
To be whatever you want. Like that's why he's a genius.
Yeah.
I think if I were to get on board, which I don't think I would, but if I were, I could meet you at the movie ends when she dies the first time. And he just goes into madness and the rest of it is in his head. Because that really isn't explained, and I often did wonder that too, because he's in the insane asylum or wherever he is, and Midge has her, like, it's a very clear send-off. You could end the movie there. Like, she walks out, there is a bit of closure to that moment, and I felt it visually, and in with her words, like, he's always gonna be in love with her, or her words, always gonna be in love with her. Like, you could, but then it just, like, fade up from black, and he's in the streets again. And I remember saying to myself, like, how long, when, why, how are we here? And I kind of just assumed based on like a line of dialogue, I think that was earlier when the doctor maybe might have said like, could be 6 months, could be a year. So I just kind of assumed that was the time frame that took, but.
Mark this moment down because you'll never hear this from me again. But that's brilliant, Keith. You're brilliant. That honestly, like I'm not even, I really think that's it. Like, that makes the most sense to me. He's got Emmys. The Emmys don't lie. No, and the reason my mind is so blown by that is because, like, it almost seems obvious now to hear you describe it.
Now that I've
like,
said it.
Yeah.
Now that I've said it.
Yes, not in the movie, but it's like, no, that's perfect. That makes sense. And that's why that last shot of Midge is so profound as she's standing there saying, he's in love with her. He's always going to be in love with her. He's fucking nuts. Like,
yeah, he's gone.
And then so the rest is in his head. And I think to me that makes the most sense. That makes everything that happens after that, this weird, dreamy, doesn't quite make a bunch of sense. Why didn't the woman leave? All that shit. He's formulated this fantasy in his head about that wasn't really her, and he's gonna go find her again, whatever it may be. But to me, that makes a ton of sense, and I'm also blown away extra because I didn't read that anywhere. So like, I'm sure someone's put forth that hypothesis before, but in my eyes, you're the first. So you're brilliant, Keith. That was really well done.
Yay! Subscribe to us on Patreon.
Yeah, pay us money for it.
For more genius takes.
Yeah. I think James Stewart sucks. More genius takes. We don't have to dwell. I've said it before. I'm not a huge James Stewart fan. I know that's controversial at best. I think he's really good at a certain thing, which is just kind of being that guffawing, aw shucks, like kind of charming, funny guy. And I think he's really good at that. I don't think he does like hard drama / terror really well, because he does have some of that holdover from what I would call the more like theatrical acting styles of the earlier decades of film, where he's like dangling from the gutter at the beginning, like, oh, like it's just like his wide-eyed look, which he has to do 4 or 5 times in this movie, always takes me out of it. I think it's funny, and those are the moments that they really should not be funny at all. But he does do, I think when he gets dark at the end, when he's like roughing her up in the stairwell.
I'll bet you're a wonderful swimmer, aren't you? Aren't you? Aren't you?
Like that's really good shit. Like it's scary and it's uncomfortable, and it's made all the more uncomfortable by the fact it's James Stewart, who's like this soft, shucksy guy.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect. I was caught off guard by, again, not knowing what was to come. I don't disagree. Like generally, I think he's pretty good at being who Jimmy Stewart is. What the roles you kind of know him for. So I agree with your take on him. And I agree with your take on his performance at the end. I thought he did a really good job sort of descending into madness.
Yeah.
I think some actors would probably go too hard too soon, or too much too much facial expression, like too like lean. And I feel like he was a pretty gradual until that last scene where you buy it, where he's fucking losing, he's just losing it.
And brave of him to do a role like this when you're like America's sweetheart dad, like to just be like, oh, I want to be a weird, you know. And if I understand correctly, this is the last film that Hitchcock did with him because Hitchcock blamed him at least partly for the tepid critical and commercial response to this film, saying he was too old and to be believable as a leading man with a young woman, which is, I think, true mostly, as we discussed. And then Jimmy Stewart lobbied hard to continue to be in Hitchcock films going forward. Sadly for him, Hitchcock was done with it.
I got one other thing that you didn't say that I just wanted to touch on. I felt one of the best ideas of the film is a throwaway, and I wanted more from it. Is a man murders his wife and hires a stunt double to pretend to be her, and then does this elaborate hoax to like frame her murder as an accident. Like that in itself is a movie, and that is a throwaway excuse as to why Jimmy Stewart is involved in this crazy scheme. Like it's such a small part of this film in some degree, when I feel like it's the best idea the film has.
But like, that's nuts, because as you say that, I'm like, yeah, this story sucks. Like, what a stupid idea. Take her out in a boat and throw her in the water. Like, poison your wife. Like, you don't need to write this huge, complicated thing where all the dominoes have to follow just right. We have to get a woman who looks just like her, and we're going to lead this guy on a wild goose chase for a week or two to make him convinced, like, because he's got vertigo, so he won't be able to chase us up.
Yeah,
like,
no, fuck,
dude,
that's what's
just shoot
fun.
her. Hire someone to shoot her. Like, it's so stupid.
What's stupid is saying that's what you would rather, like a film that just goes bang, you're dead. Like, no, that's fun.
I'd rather like a film. I just like if
it's a movie. It's not a documentary. It's a movie.
Yeah, but I mean that's a flaw. That's a flaw. Then if your whole crux of your idea is that ludicrous, just because like it's a movie, you don't be like, oh, okay, cool. That's like a cool idea. It's not a cool idea if it makes zero sense in real life. No, come on.
You're being a curmudgeon. You're being a piece of shit right now. Stop being a piece of shit.
Well, that may be true.
I feel like that's a clever ways to tell murder stories has gone by the wayside. This is an interesting way to try and present this story. It's rather than just being like, oh yeah, I poisoned her.
Well, yeah, obviously you don't tell that story, but it's weird. It's weird. Like, we can both be right here that, like, yes, you don't want to go see a movie about, oh, this guy hates his wife, so he poisoned her. The end. Yes, I agree, Keith. But, like, also, if you develop the most, like, convoluted, crazy plan, like, the audience has the right to be like, oh, if he wanted her dead, if that's that character's motivation, why didn't he just kill her?
He did kill her. That's the point. He did kill her, but he's trying to get away with it. So he's trying to be extra smart. He's got to be one step ahead. So he has a cop be a witness to the suicide. He's gonna get away with it.
I don't like that you're putting me in this position to be this guy. But people kill their wives all the time, Keith. They get away with it, and they don't plan this huge, wild thing. Join us next week as we continue to go through Hitchcock's filmography and just tell you how it could be better.